Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. I'm Grandmaster Shaman and today we're going to be continuing my top 100 list. I took a week off last week. I had to get some things sorted out. If you want to know more about it, I talked about it in my live stream earlier today. But now it's time to move on to the next 10 on our list, number 80 through 71. And we're going to start things off with number 80. So this is kind of a psychological horror show that got me really interested. I was on a fix when I watched it, where I rewatched Higurashi, I watched Shiki, I watched a bunch of kind of gory horror shows in a row. I don't know what it was, but I was just having this fix for that kind of horror, and this show of course came up. Now, not obviously the best of them all, but the idea was really interesting. It revolves around a specific mysterious student that the main character encounters within the first episode of the show. And the two of them, the more that he gets to know her, the more that everything seems off. Not to mention, the school has a mystery. There is an extra person every single year that's supposedly dead, but no one knows who it is, and anyone who had known that person had died has their memory completely erased and rewritten differently. So now it's just a rumor, though. It's not like it's actually something that's there, but it's the story that this specific class has every single year, and supposedly people die every month leading up to whenever this person is found and taken out of the picture. Of course, the main character doesn't believe this stuff, but some things start to happen that makes him start to change his mind, and of course you'll have to actually watch the anime to see what happens, or who this mysterious person might be, or if there is one at all. Or perhaps it's all in their minds. But either way, the psychological horror factor is really interesting, especially when things start to break down as people kind of get their heads wrapped up in this mystery towards the end of this season. So definitely a show to keep out for. It's moving on now to number 79. Well, this show just came out just last year, and I thought it was amazing. Of course, it doesn't show up very high on the list. One, because sure, it's very good, but there's still a lot missing, and with the question of whether or not we'll actually get a second season, it definitely seems to beg the question of whether or not this is going to be a show worth putting in my top 75 or even 70. So we'll have to wait and see if a second season comes out or if it doesn't. But Land of the Lustrous is a very interesting show. So every single character in the show, except for one, is a kind of, I want to say genderless, but they all kind of look and talk like women. Crystallized people, except, again, the headmaster, who seems to be a normal human being. And the show revolves around the main character, who is kind of a weak crystal. They're not really extremely tough, and because of that, they can't really do a whole lot of jobs. And because of that, they're really seen as worthless, not to mention a klutz, and even the slightest fall might break them. But of course, they can be put back together using not only their own materials, but if they use other materials, it kind of depends on whether or not their body can accept those materials. At first, everything seems pretty normal, but giant monsters come from the sky, which are hoping to harvest these crystallized people and take them away to who knows where. And the crystallized people have to fight those beings in order to survive in this world, for they don't know what might happen if they were captured by these creatures. So it's a really interesting concept, and what I really like about this is that the main character, who's a klutz and really is kind of happy-go-lucky, undergoes one of the better characterizations of anime in general, in my opinion, which is really what puts this show up to number 79. I was thinking of keeping it out of the list entirely, but as I think more about the main character's development over the course of the series and the stuff that happens, which you'll have to find out what that is, I really, really, really enjoyed it. They did an amazing, amazing job developing this character, but it would be a lot higher on my list had they not glossed over a couple of parts. While I can see why this character changed, we get to kind of skip the slow development of their characterization. Again, you'll have to see the show to understand why, but the development of the character is kind of glossed over. You get to see the end result, and you get to see why it was caused, but the middle is a bit shadowy, not really taken into great detail, and that's something that I really hurt me a little bit. But the parts that we did see are really good, so I decided to put it at number 79. Number 78.
満開ステップバイステップで進めステップアウサー飛び出せ私よ開花最前線上昇中
So this show is actually really interesting. A show about making video games in Japan, and I gotta say, I mean, after watching the show, I was like, man, I gotta play these. I gotta go out there and make some video games. I gotta go out there and do the thing. Even though I'm no good with technology, I could barely stream on YouTube, as you could probably tell. I'm not super fantastic at it, but the show really intrigued me in the whole video game making process. And while I'm sure the characters are extremely over dramatic, I think that all things considered, you know, this show does give you a little bit of insight on characterization and how the development of the overall process of making video games works. And that's something that I really enjoyed over the course of these 2 seasons. Not to mention the second season's opening song is really nice. I think it's a great song. Hence why I used it in the opening rather than season 1, which is what I usually do and probably will continue to do. But I gotta say that season 2 is way better than season 1's opening. But all things considered, like, if you guys are at all interested in making video games, even if it's just like a, you know, I wonder how it works, then by all means check this out. Even if you're not, you might find yourself interested after watching this show. They have great characters that really interest you, and not to mention the video games that they make and the process of making them is really, really cool. And I especially love Season 2. You know, Season 1, they kind of don't really introduce the beginning process. You know, they don't really introduce how the idea comes up and, you know, how the beginning is, because the main character gets hired on after the game has already been decided and announced. Well, not announced, but decided by the superiors, and so the crew is working on it, not like publicly announced. But in Season 2, we get to see how the actual process is of picking out which game is going to be next in an original game, and how the character designer and other people at Play seem to take part in this discussion. So that's something that really intrigued me about this series. Moving on now to number 77. Problem Children Are Coming from Another World, Aren't They? Is a short series. It's only 10 episodes. And I would really like to see more, which is why it's so low, but it has one of my favorite main characters of any series ever. So the main character, Izayoi, is a really, really fun and interesting character. He's really overconfident about everything, which is just kind of fun to watch, and I especially like the big fight that courses over the 10th episode. And if I remember correctly, it's been a little while since I watched this. I believe it starts into the 9th episode, but you can't quite quote me on that. But it's definitely a show that I feel like deserved a lot more. We won't be getting it. I don't think that they'll release a season 2 for this show. Over 8, I think it was made in 2010 or so. They won't be releasing a second season, period. And it really sucks because I really like this show, but because of that, I do have to put it at number 77 and not much higher, despite a great character, some really cool fight scenes, and an interesting plot, not to mention an amazing ending song and opening song. Both songs are really good. I play it on my iPod all the time. Moving on now to number 76. Chunibyo, also known as 8th graders syndrome or middle school sickness, is a show about that. It is a common term used in Japan for kind of the weirdness that goes on in people. So I guess in Japan it's extremely common for people of mid to early middle school, even late elementary school, to honestly believe that they are something more than they are, such as Dark Flame Master, for example, and to write down these crazy scripts or whatever. But this takes place after 8th grade. The main character finds a girl who is still in this awkward Chunibyo stage, and she kind of comes into his life because she lives right above him. And it's kind of a really, really cute romantic story, but also a kind of eye-opening real story about overcoming, but still, maybe overcoming is not the right word, but keeping the fun of Chunibyo without letting it cloud reality. And it's trying to get the main female lead to basically realize that she doesn't have these abilities. She's not really this character that she's believing herself to be, but pretending and knowing that it's pretend, and occasionally having these cute little Chunibyo moments really is okay. It's fun, it's interesting. There's no reason to stop it all completely, but as long as you realize that it's not real and you stop with this kind of weird fake character that you've put yourself in, that everything will turn out all right. And the real relationship between Dark Flame Master and the Golden Eye it's just a really, really cute story. It spans over 3 seasons, so it's not short, but I think the 3 seasons really is not necessary, but it definitely adds a lot to the characterization and the development of the relationship between the 2 characters, and as well as the other characters. But I'm going to make a note right here. The English dub sucks. Period. End of discussion. There is a lot of shows that the English dub is okay or good at, such as, like, you know, Fate. But this, no, do not watch this show dubbed. I tried, but I cannot watch Deko Mori without her stressing the des at the end of sentences for death. Because if you stress it, it means death instead of an affirmative ending to a statement. So that I always liked, and not to mention the fact that there's this awesome song you can find on YouTube, the Death Song or whatever with Chinibyo. If you look it up, you'll find it. It's terrific. Not as good as the Desu song from Kirino Mosaic, which I'll give a shout out to. It's not my top 100, but I love it a lot. Definitely like 102 or so. We'll throw it there. Moving on now, we have number 75. Baccano has one of the best opening themes that I know of. The saxophone is just terrific, and it's going to be a little bit confusing for a lot of people. I really like the story and such, but it does a lot of jumping from, 2 years before to present to last year to the ending to all sorts of stuff, And the Flying Pussyfoot is a great name for a train, by the way. Definitely a very interesting choice. But this is the story of, I believe, 3, if I remember correctly, 3 sets of stories about these groups of characters that all happen to be on this train at the same time, going through different stuff that all connects, and they all meet over the course of this great thrilling train ride. And I gotta say that this show is really, really interesting. It really is really well put together, not to mention as long as you can follow the dates, I think you'll kind of understand. I think that the format that it is in actually works really well for it, because it doesn't actually spoil too much. Like I said, it shows the ending. And by the way, it actually shows the ending in episode 1, but not really at the same time. There's still a lot that has yet to be solved, not to mention Isaac and Miria are one of the greatest sets of characters of any anime ever. I think I'm going to make a top 100 characters of anime with no series duplicates. But stay tuned for that after the 100 anime that I have right now. Moving on now to number 74. Did you really think I was not going to put a Yuri on my top 100s list? Let's be real here. This is the only true Yuri that's on my list. While it is a guilty pleasure of mine because of obvious reasons, if you know who I am, I really particularly liked Strawberry Panic at the most. In fact, I own it up there on those shelves. It is about basically the main character falling in love with the princess of campus, basically. And it's a really interesting and very dramatic story which is one of the reasons why I put this on here, is because the dramatic, romantic storyline is very interesting, whether or not it's Yuri or straight. It's a very interesting story in general. Not to mention, it does have a couple of side stories of other Yuri pairings going on at the same time. But the main one is definitely the one that draws in the most interest. While there is some really awkward parts of the show, I believe there is this one part where there's like a ghost or something. That was kind of ridiculous. But overall, the course of the show, it was really good, and hence why I own it. And not to mention, the end is really intriguing, but the show does not have a dub. I do have to mention that. While I would like it to get one, right now it's not going to matter. Again, if you're interested in why I'm not watching dub anymore, you should check out my live stream that I did earlier today. That will clue you into it a little bit. But we're going to move on now to number 73. So this is another 3-season anime, and I am a huge fan. It's a little weird, okay? It's a little weird. They have these fake wars going on, and the wars, you don't actually kill people. They're fun wars. They're mini fun wars, which sounds really weird, but basically whenever you take enough damage, I guess, the people turn into these little fuzzballs. I don't know if, like, it's hard to tell whether or not the series legitimately turns them into fuzzballs, or if it's just kind of like a, oh, you know, these people are out type of thing. Not to mention, all the attacks take off their clothing. It's not ecchi though. Well, I mean it is, but it's not. There's no nudity in it. It's a show about the three main characters. Well, I mean, there's one in season 1, and then there's 3 at the end of season 1. The 3 main characters are middle school students from Japan who get transported, well, summoned to this weird dog animal world with, you know, anthropomorphic human animals, which is cute. I mean, come on, gotta admit it's cute. And so you have the kind of pairings off the bat. But what's interesting is that the other two, the main character is obviously a dude, because you gotta have a random ass dude in there. But the other 2 characters are women, and that leads to a lot of Yuri pairings, which I like as well. Not to mention, the story is kind of interesting, you know, how they have these fake wars go on, and the diplomatic situation where, you know, they don't actually, like, fight. All the kings and the princesses and everybody's friends. It's just like everyone has this massive hard-on for fake battle tournaments. It's almost like I don't know. It's just weird. It's just, but I love it. I love the characters. I love the whole fake battle thing. I like the characters are amazing. Like they're really well developed. And over the course of the 3 seasons, you just have to love them. And then, of course, while these fake battles are happening, all of a sudden, a real threat pops up. And so then you have that, of course, looming at the end of each season, where the evil power of not fake battles shows up, and you got to stop them. And that's really cool. I mean, it's, again, guilty pleasure of mine. This is my top 100. You don't have to agree with it. That's fine. But, you know, if you haven't watched Dog Days yet, you should. It is subbed. It is not dubbed. But the action in it, the fight scenes, even though, you know, they're not actually, like, killing each other, is still pretty cool. And not to mention, you know, they're all, like, it shows flashbacks of them competing in, like, the junior freaking ninja championships or whatever they are. So I definitely recommend you go check that out. Of course, I have Kyoko here from Dog Days, or Yuki, sorry. Not Kyoko. I keep calling her Kyoko. She's not Kyoko, it's Yuki. But I have Yuki here from Dog Days, you know, cool beans. Moving on now to number 72. So I'm not going to lie, I was going to leave this one off the list until about the day after I decided to make the list, which I made this list like 2 weeks before I actually aired the first episode. But No Game No Life, I mean, if you haven't heard of No Game No Life, you probably aren't like a real anime. Okay, that's mean. I'm not going to say that. But you're not like it's just under mainstream, if not still mainstream. Like it's up there with the most mainstream of mainstream shows. Of course, but it's only 12 episodes. It's a really great concept about this entire world where everything is decided through games. And I really like it, but of course we may never get a second season, and with the way the first season ended, there's still so much left. Like, you could make a Naruto length show on this shit. Just the way that they set up the plot, you know that they could do that. And they could still not have fluff episodes. They really could. With how many pieces they gotta get and all that, they could do that. But I was gonna leave this one off the list with just that first season until I watched the movie. The day after I made this list, I watched the movie and I decided to put it up here at number 72. The movie was amazing, and it is the story of how this world of games started. Holy crap, dude. If you're ready for some feels, I never thought like so much shit would happen. I didn't think going into it that it would be as intense as it was. But they tell you in the show how the game world became there, how Tet took over, you know, the world and became God. They told you about the wars and stuff, and then the movie just blew my expectations out of the water. It is absolutely fantastic, and if you have not seen it yet, I don't know if it will get dubbed. I don't think it's dubbed yet, but by the gods, like, fantastic show. Hell of a feels trip. Hurts just thinking about it, to be honest. But an amazing show. If you have not seen it, you should definitely watch it. I'm sure it's on Crunchyroll. So you should definitely go and do that. Moving on now to the last one of this top 10. We're going to do a twofer, though, because I'm crazy like that, and it's probably late at night by the time this actually airs. But we're going to do a twofer, and we're going to do number 70 through 61 right after this, because I'm freaking wild. So next up, we have number 71. So this is going to be a bit risque. I don't think there's any nudity in it, if I remember correctly, but it is about sex, like a lot. The difference is this is a very realistic take on it. And this is why I rated it as high as I did. Not to mention the characters and everything going on is really intriguing. The drama is there. So the story is about this girl and this guy who love different people. The guy loves a female teacher, the girl loves this male teacher, and they both dream of getting with those two all the time. However, the age difference, the whole being a teacher thing, it just seems impossible. And one day they find out about each other's obsession with these people, and they decide to get together themselves. Relieve some frustration. You know, they both have this in common, and it goes from there. And I gotta say, while it is, again, if you're not really into kind of this intense drama related to sex, it's fine, don't watch it. But I think that this is something that is kind of, I don't know if I want to say real, but enough to where you really think about this type of situation and the things that it involves and how these characters would honestly handle this kind of situation, especially as another person is thrown into the mix of these characters with something that really they can't really rely on and they can't really act upon. And that character, by the way, is my favorite one of the series. It definitely reminds me of somebody. But I gotta say that it's definitely a good show. Again, along with some of these other ones, it's not dubbed. I doubt it will ever be dubbed. Shows about these kind of things don't tend to be. Though I haven't really seen a show as dramatic and kind of real, has this really heavy realism to it. So I don't think it will be getting a dub, but again, unless you're one of those dub for life, sub sucks people, I definitely recommend it. So that's it for this episode. Make sure you click that like button down below for me. Even if you don't agree, just let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And thank you all for watching. And I hope you guys have a good day.